Hello there. So in this video, we will learn about the font family in CSS. So as usual, I have this HTML document where we have h1, div, paragraphs, and so on and so forth. You can just create one HTML document to follow along with some content, obviously. Okay, and it is opened in live server. So if I go to the browser right now, so as you can see, this is the default font which my browser is showing. If you are in Linux or in Mac OS, then the font will be different. I am in Windows, so this is the default font. And if I just show it to you, if I just select this H1, let me just select the whole H1, and here the font size is there and so on and so forth, but the font family is not displayed here. So if we go to computed here and scroll down, and as you can see, here it is, the rendered font. For my case, it is Times New Roman. Okay. Now basically there are bunch of families of fonts, right? And you can go to the MDN documentation here for font family. And okay, let me just close out. And here, as you can see, there are bunch of things. And if you just scroll down, then what you will see, this is the syntax. So basically we have to write font family and then the name of the font, and then this is a group, like a generic group. So if this font is not available, I'll just zoom in a little bit. So if this font is not available, use the sans serif font, which is available by default inside of this machine. Okay, so here there are some generic family names. This is the serif, we have the sans serif, and we have the monospace, cursive, and so on and so forth. System UI, which used quite a lot, UI serif, and so on. These are not that much used. Okay, so yeah, so let's learn about that. So here what I'll do, let's learn about a what is the difference between the serif and the sans serif. You can go to Wikipedia, and this is for the serif Wikipedia page. And as you can see, the sans serif is like pretty normal text. But if we have the serif font, then we have these dashes and these extensions inside of the font. I am not a typography expert, by the way. Just wanted to let you know. So this is the sans serif and the serif fonts. Okay. So now if I go to the browser, this is it. And now go to the code editor, and I have just get rid of all of that. And let's do for the H1. Okay. So let's do font family. And here inside of VS Code, we have some auto suggestions, which we will cover in a bit. But let's do serif and let's see what happens. Okay, nothing that much changed. So this is the serif font. And if I go to the computed once again, and it is still using the Times New Roman. All right. Then go to the code editor and let's do sans serif. Now what will happen is that this H1 will use the default sans serif font which is available to the machine. It might be different in Mac or in Linux or in Chromebooks. So if I go here, as you can see, our font is now changed from the rest of the font. And if I just go here, and now what this font is, so the H1 is using the Arial font which is installed in my machine. Okay, now you might be thinking, okay, this is a little bit confusing right now because we do not have a proper bounding of the fonts which we can use and which we cannot use. So for example, if I write something like, this is the sans serif, something like some font which is called SF Pro. which only available in Mac, I believe. You can install, but Pro Display. You can install this font in Windows as well. I'm not sure about that, but it is mostly available in Mac. And now if I go to the browser, what happens? So as this, like the browser could not understand that SF Pro font, then what it did is basically to fall back to the default font which we had, which is the Times New Roman. Okay, so now this raises a little bit confusion. To resolve that, what we have this website which is called CSS Font Stack. Okay, and here you can see like, hey, this Arial font is available in Windows and as well as in Mac OS and so on. So you can see like the sans serif fonts, the serif fonts and so on. But you can technically use any font of your choice. We will discuss that in a little bit, but we can use the font as long as we provide the font files with the HTML files. Okay, so what we can do right now, we can just say something like, let's do, okay, so this Calibri, okay, so this one I'll just copy and let's use this one, right, for the H1. So let's go to the code, and so when we have spaces, we have to wrap it inside of the quotes. Okay, so let's go after that and do a comma and say, hey, if you are not able to find that, then use Calibri. Okay, now if I go to the browser, as you can see, our font is changed, and this Calibri font is available in Windows and as well as in Mac OS as well. So now what happened is that the font family is now Calibri. Because it wasn't able to find the SF Pro font, so it fall back to Calibri instead of the default font, because we have given the instruction to fall back to that. And after that, what we can do, we can just do another thing, which to mention the font group. So if in any machine, for example in a Chromebook, these two fonts might not be available, right? So what it should do, it should fall back to the default sans serif font. So sans serif. Okay, and there we go. Okay, now what will happen is that if the browser is not able to find the fonts of like the SF Pro and Calibri, it will fall back to the default sans serif font for the machine which it has. Okay, so this is called, this syntax is called a font stack, and there are a bunch of stacks, by the way, which I was mentioning. So if I just get rid of that and do control space, and here as you can see there are a bunch of things which is available to us. Okay, so cursive, fantasy, monospace and so on and so forth. Let's go with something like I really like this one, like the Helvetica one. Let me just find it one. Yes, this one, the Sigu UI, Tahoma and so on. So yeah, okay, so this font will be rendered inside of the H1, like the font family will be this. Okay, and if I just inspect, so it is Sigu UI. Also let's change it to something else if we can. So let's go with again control space, and yes, this one as well. This is a pretty simple one, which is the Arial, Helvetica and sans serif. So let's use that. Okay, and go to here, and as you can see, let me just check what font it is. It is Arial. Okay, now if the Arial font is not available, then it will try to use Helvetica. If that is not available, then it will use the default sans serif font which is installed in the machine. All right, so let's extend that a little bit more. So let's see about the body. Let's do a body, and let's do font family to, let's do sans serif. that is all. Okay, now our body is using the sans serif font. All right, but one thing you have must noticed before I tell you, like, hey, I was applying the font family for this H1, but it was also applied to the span as well. So what is happening, it is using the CSS inheritance. Again, we have the body element, and inside of that we have this div, the h2, and so on and so forth. Everything has the like the font family which we have applied. So the font family is inherited from the parent to the child element. Okay, now what I can do, let's see some other font families. So let's do the P. Now if we want to override that, right? So if we do like font family, and let's do monospace and see what happens. Now it is using the default monospace font which my machine has, which is, I believe, Consolas. Yep, this is the Consolas font, which is good. So now we can override the inheritance as well. So this is the, what do you call, the monospace font. Let's go in the here. Let's try different things, right? Let's do cursive and see what happens, right? So go to the code editor. Let's do cursive and so on. Let's go to the browser and go to here. And as you can see, this is the cursive font, which is Comic Sans. Okay, which doesn't look that much good. Let's do one thing once again. Let's do fantasy and see what happens, right? So let's do fantasy, save, and go to the browser. And now it is using this impact font. Okay, so I am selecting the P and this is using the impact font. Let's do something like, okay, let's do something like math. Why not? So let's go to the code editor, math, and looks like VS Code is not picking that up. All right, that is okay. And now we have this font, and this is a little bit different than the like the default font which we had, and this is using the Cambria math font. Okay, so this is basically the font family in a nutshell. But once again, you are not limited by the fonts which is being installed inside of the machine of the user. You can use any font you want, and one of the things you can use is called Google Fonts. So let me just go here. So this is the Google Fonts, and here you will have bunch of fonts like this Roboto, this like Open Sans, and so on and so forth. And if you go here, you can embed that font with the CSS, and you can use that font family as well, which we will definitely do. So yeah, this is basically the font family in CSS.